Martin North, John Adams. In the interest of the people. Hello, John.
Hello, sir.
Good to see you. You do stir it up, don't you?
Well, I don't try, but it just so happens that controversy falls from the heavens into my lap.
I reckon it follows just on your shoulder all the time.
Could do. So Martin, I didn't want to sort of do a show about this, but then I thought about it in the last 24 hours. So just so our audience knows, I've had a run-in with the ABC, and it's now become an international story. And initially, I put out on Twitter, and then it blew up, and the Australian press all over the place has covered it in detail. And international comments and international stories have already been written about this as well. So it's a very stupid story, I should say. I don't think this is really significant in the broader scheme of things, but I really want to do a show to really just highlight is, in my view, and I think that we've discussed this on a previous occasion, when you look at the economy and where I think Australian society is headed, if you were to ask me the question, is Australia headed in the right direction or the wrong direction? I would say on a whole host of metrics, we're headed in the wrong direction. And the question then becomes is, well, why are we headed in the wrong direction? And I think you have a term of Rome burning while people fiddle.
Fiddling while Rome burns, actually.
Yeah.
Yes. So that was Nero, right? Fiddling on watching the whole of Rome burning and being destroyed, right? And not focusing on the right things, right? And that's my problem with what I see at the moment, right? There's a lot of focus on silly things, stupid things, facile things, right? And the big issues, the important issues, the critical issues that actually will shape our future are just off the agenda. Nobody wants to talk about them.
That's the point I want people to actually understand is the elite establishment, the politicians, the press, corporate Australia, all of the people who actually have the ability to change the direction of this country are so focused on the wrong things and the important things that should be talked about. A lot of it's not, and when it is, it's done at a very superficial level.
Yeah. And pretty much all the mainstream media are exactly the same, right? They're doing precisely that.
Indeed. So let me just talk about this new controversy with the ABC. So yesterday afternoon, I was at home. I was actually working on my submission for the Senate inquiry about bail-in, which was our last show, and I get a phone call. And the phone call is from a producer from ABC Radio Sydney. This is associated with the James Valentine program. And basically, they wanted to have a discussion about the game of chess. So I've been a big chess player all my life. I used to be a part of the Australian Chess Federation many years ago. I was the government relations director. If people Google me, John Adams and chess, they'll find a whole bunch of stories from about 2015 and 16 where I had some significant national involvement. And they wanted to do a story, and basically in the context of racial tension, Black Lives Matter, all of this sort of stuff, they wanted to have a discussion about should the rules of chess be changed, because in the international rules at the moment, white goes first. And they said, well, in the current context, is that appropriate? Should there be a discussion about this? Should be there a change? Now, I'll make a couple of points on this. The first one is, because I was just actually on Sky News on the Credlin show, and they asked me about this. Was I surprised by this conversation? Well, no, because, there are, without being too divisive, there are people who have a particular political ideological bent, cultural Marxism, if you want to use that term, who have made this comment about chess in the past to say that there is a racial inequality in this game because white always goes first. So even though some chess experts have never heard this argument, I have heard this argument over the last couple of years. So I wasn't surprised by this, but I basically declined to comment. I said I'm no longer involved in the official chess circles. I gave them someone's name, and that person actually did the interview with the ABC today. And it was surprising that they still went ahead with all the controversy that has actually happened. So basically, we ended the conversation. And then I decided to actually put out a tweet about it because I thought it was just, it was important just to highlight that, we as taxpayers pay for the ABC. We want the ABC to talk about the big issues. We want serious analysis. It's fair to say that on the cash ban, we got a good run with the ABC, and I'm willing to credit Nassim Kadem. She did some very good reporting on that. I've had some discussions with the ABC about bail-in, and so there is some interest on that issue, and I think, again, that's an important topic. But there has been some other issues where you and I have discussed, monetary policy, Reserve Bank, interest rates, debt bubbles, a whole host of important topics where we've tried to engage certain business journalists at the ABC, and they just did not want to play ball. So I don't think that even with the ABC, they've actually done done right by the public by not addressing all of the key points. But then but when I get this sort of juvenile sort of question, I couldn't help myself. So I put out a tweet. And certain people saw it and they started to retweet, and then we had a Sky News presenter who has about 210,000 followers. She retweeted it, and then it started to really pick up steam. And so yesterday, we had some articles from the Daily. We'll put these on the screen. The Daily Telegraph. We had the Daily Mail Australia calling me a chess master and basically saying I was slamming the ABC. News.com wrote about it. It was mentioned on Sky News last night, and obviously, there are certain interest groups in the press who want to use this as a wedge against the ABC for political purposes. And then I was invited to go on Sydney Radio this morning, 2GB, and then 2SM. So I did that. I went on Sky News today, and really, it was to highlight this point that there are some very big issues with COVID-19, the lockdown, the state of the economy, the financial markets. We need, our public broadcaster to focus on the big ticket items and not, in terms of these sort of silly arguments.
Well, I've got a simple solution for the chess. Alternate start. Start black first one time, white the next time. Problem solved.
Well, so I'm glad you mentioned that. So now the history of this is that yes, chess was invented in India, but prior to 1889, pretty much you would have sort of a ballot by lots, and whoever actually won the lot would actually pick the color. So there was no standardized process. But in about 1889, the first world chess champion basically wrote some conventional rules, and they tried to standardize the game, and they basically said white always goes first. So this is only a 130-year convention. Now, the issue that I have is that you think of checkers, black goes first. Now, in East Asia, you've got a strategy game called Go, which is heavily played in Japan and China. In that game, black goes first. Why was it that the ABC only focused on chess? Because they have a certain political agenda driven by a ideological point of view that is so contrary to the public interest, given all the other big issues that are happening here. You really have to question: are we getting value for money from the broadcaster? And again, the fact that. So I thought it was juvenile that the ABC asked me, and they did go ahead and actually do the story. And the official who I suggested they interviewed, that he did agree to interview, but he basically didn't want to talk about race. He said there's nothing to do with race. He gave the history of chess, all of that sort of stuff. But then obviously we had a whole host of other mainstream outlets, new print as well as radio as well as TV, who wanted to pounce on the ABC. So now, we have this back and forth on a whole bunch of very minute detail, irrelevant stuff, and like we just said, the big stuff's not being addressed.
Yeah, and it's just worth saying, John, I've had at least half a dozen people contact me directly and basically indirectly accuse you of being racist, right, because of your attitude, right? And basically suggest I should have nothing further to do with you. That's how far it's gone.
All right. Well, I mean, so you didn't tell me this before we recorded. So can you reveal to the audience? So given that I was minding my own business and I received the phone call from the ABC, how was I being racist?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just telling you, you're assuming a logic in the Twitter sphere that probably doesn't exist, right? But it's just interesting that people are acutely attuned to this. And let me just say, the Black Lives Matter thing is an important issue, and we're not in any way belittling that, right? The chess thing is a sideshow. It's stupid. It should never have been spoken about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the other things, so I should say that, Channel 7 covered it. It was actually discussed on the Today Show on Channel 9. And then former world chess champion Garry Kasparov, he decided to weigh in and he slammed the ABC as well because it is just so stupid. Yeah. I wouldn't mind just clarifying this for the audience. A number of people have said, I'm a white person. Now, you are from the UK. You are white,
yes.
Anglo-Saxon. Now, my heritage is from West Asia, so the Middle East. So I'm technically not white. So I just want to. So there's been a couple of audience members who have said over the last week that I'm, actually one person said this show is too white. I said, but I'm not white myself. So it's interesting that now people are saying I'm racist because of what? Because I called out the buffoonery of the ABC.
Yeah. It's there's no logic to it, and that's the point. And in a way, it's a microcosm of the stupidity that I see all the time, right? Where effectively, that there are bits of question and argument thrown around really that make no sense at all. I mean, I don't know what proportion of Twitter is in that category, but it's quite a high proportion.
Indeed. One of the points that really should sort of try to bring this conversation to a head. We see these things happen all the time in sort of the mainstream, where whether it's popular programming like what I would call BS shows like The Bachelor or Married at First Sight or some programs that actually don't get people thinking, or the press where they come up with these diversionary stories, what you classically call misdirection. There's all these sort of stories that make people look over this way, whereas the establishment is doing things over that way. And obviously, we've had some success in the last couple of years working together, where we've tried to highlight some issues, bring the evidence to the audience, and we've had a good chunk of Australians who are interested to actually understand, listen to an alternative point of view about economics, finance, banking, and politics, and all the other issues that we've covered. So we're seeing in this process of the mainstream media basically wasting people's time, making them look in one direction where they should be actually focused on a whole bunch of other important issues, and all the issues particularly around the economy. This debt bubble it's still with us. So all of our big problems. So from economics to innovation, narcotics, educational attainment, population health. I mean, we've got some big the environment. We've got some big challenges, and rather than actually try to tackle these things and actually have action that's actually going to work, these problems are still here. They're getting worse, and to me, I think we are witnessing in real time the destruction of Australia, and it is by an elite who lacks the capacity to govern, and who actually are not engaging with the ordinary citizen to actually bring the community together so that we can actually come to some sort of consensus. There's all these divide and conquer sort of cultural sort of issues. And that doesn't take the conversation forward. I mean, one of the things that I think that I've enjoyed in this dialogue that you and I have had for 2 years is, as I've had members of the audience contact me, I've had all sorts of people from different ethnic backgrounds to genders, sexual orientation. I mean economics. It doesn't matter. What race you are or gender, etc. I mean, everyone faces the same sort of challenges, the same sort of risks, and so I think one of the good things about our show is we try to bring people together because we are talking about a set of issues which are relevant for all Australians, no matter what their background is.
Well, I think that's right. These are profoundly important issues for everybody in Australia, as you say, wherever they may have come from, whatever their orientation in terms of political parties or anything else. These are massively critical issues, and yet, if you look out there in mainstream media land, they're hardly touched. And that's a disgrace. Right? Gives us an opportunity to continue to, paint the picture of what should we talk about. There's a quote about bread and circuses. And we've come across that, right? But it's what the Romans said, right? Long as people have something to eat and they can be entertained, they'll be fine. They won't cause us any problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bit like the mentality we've got at the moment here, right?
Yes.
Effectively, they'll just assume that we won't engage and, they can just go do what they want. And in fact, of course, there are huge issues and big decisions being taken that will profoundly affect this country, not just for the next couple of years, but the next generation or two.
Indeed. One final point I'll make is that, after I was on 2GB this morning with Ben Fordham, Ben actually interviewed the Treasurer. And there was something that happened in that interview that's worth calling out. So sometimes you do get a journalist that's willing to ask a question, and the question that was asked is, well, how am I going to pay down this debt? Where are the spending cuts going to come from? And Frydenberg said, well, we're committed to these big ticket spending items on NDIS, welfare, health and education, which is pretty much 60 to 70% of the federal budget. But we're going to grow our way out of, this deficit problem, and that's how we're going to pay down the debt. Now, my issue with this interview that happened this morning is it was a good question, but there was no follow-up because any reasonable economist, a banking expert, accountant would know that answer from Frydenberg is complete BS. I mean, if you're going to balance the budget, yes, economic growth is important, but you have to cut spending, and you actually have to cut spending quite aggressively if we're actually going to close these deficits down. So when you're getting someone saying, in effect, he's saying, I don't have the political will to tell the Australian people I need to cut the NDIS, or I need to cut education, health, or welfare. And he just says, we're going to keep everything in place and we're just going to go our way out of it. I mean, that's part of the other problem is journalists need to push hard against these politicians because these politicians have rehearsed lines and they just repeat them and they just get away with utter crap.
Well, I agree. And one of the things that really gets my goat is this implicit concept of people pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps, right? So it's almost saying, it'll be fine. Economy will grow. Everything will just spill over and magically it will all be solved, right? It's not like that. That's not the real world, is it?
No.
And I think that's the critical point. And let's get some realism in the conversation, right? And there should be some real hard questioning of our politicians, particularly with all the things that are going on, rather than just these superficial conversations and quick questions and quick answers and move on, and nobody really delves into things deeply. It's almost as if a lot of the media and the politicians are actually on the same side of the fence.
Could be.
I don't know whether that's true, but that's what I feel like. It almost feels as though they're in this sort of, little enclave where they're actually all nodding at each other and just sort of throwing the little conversations around. We can watch, but that's about it. And that, to me, is not good democracy in action.
No, yeah, I mean, yes. So it does look like it's a pantomime, like a whole bunch of actors who playing a part. So yeah. I mean, I mentioned it in a former show. This is why The Matrix is so important. Like when I watched it last year for the first time, because this whole mainstream paradigm, it's a fake simulation of what they want you to think the world is, and yet once you get into the detail, the world of economics, the world of banking and financial markets and everything else is very different. And so I would encourage people that in conclusion, stick with us, stick in the real world, let's have a real conversation, and hopefully we can bring more people out of the matrix to actually engage in real issues that are important for the country's future.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully get a checkmate somewhere down the track.
Indeed.
Thanks, John. Good to talk to you once again.
Thank you.
Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of people. We'll see you next time.